Charlie Kirk's public assassination at a college campus in Utah was captured on cameras and shared all over social media. The 31-year-old Trump ally and co-founder of the influential organization Turning Point USA, which is based right here in Arizona, was speaking to a crowd at Utah Valley University when he was murdered. A video showing the moment of impact looped over and over again, quickly spreading online. It was never taken down as it would have been in the past. That's because for more than 150 years, news organizations have served as gatekeepers when it comes to explicit content, making editorial decisions around violent events to decide what images and words will be made public. But in this era of social media, smartphones, and instant video uploads, the role of gatekeeper no longer exists. So how do we explain to our kids what they saw? And as adults, how do we make sense of what we saw? Thanks so much for joining us on 12 Plus at 7 o'clock. I'm Tram Mai. Joining me now for today's discussion is psychologist and licensed therapist Dr. Morgan Francis from Scottsdale Premier Counseling. Morgan, thanks so much for sitting down with us and having this in-depth conversation. I think so many of us are still trying to process and comprehend what just happened yesterday. There have been assassination attempts in the past with political figures, people have held office, but this was someone who technically never held office. And something like this to play out is just incomprehensible. I mean, I'm curious, first of all, what was your reaction when you found out what had happened?
Shock, grief. I couldn't describe it. I was taking a moment before I was about to log in to meet with one of my clients, and I went and saw an account that I often visit on my social media app, and she's a source of information about current events, and I highly respect her. And she was crying. And then I turned on the volume, and she said that Charlie Kirk had been shot. And I was in disbelief, like so many of us, unsure if this was even really real news that was happening, if this was credible. But her being such a credible resource made me believe that it was. And then the text messages started to come through. But I had to, get onto the computer to have a session with one of my clients, and we really spent the whole session processing our own grief and our own disbelief about what just unfolded in front of us, and then the graphic images start to come in.
Well, and I think that's the thing. I mean, you may not have known, people may not have known who Charlie Kirk was, or who, unfamiliar with him and the role that he had and the reach that he had. And no matter what side of the party you're on, it is just unreal to think that this happened in broad daylight because someone may have disagreed with his beliefs. And, to think that it has escalated to this level. I mean, politics lately have been very heated, obviously, but to this level where someone died, that is the surreal part and why people are really struggling with this.
Yes, and what I'm hearing a lot from parents is what happens when my teenager, who I'm trying to encourage him or her to have their own set of beliefs and be able to share and be able to have conversations about what they believe in, are they not allowed to do that anymore? What happened to our freedom of speech? What happened to being able to have debates, to have two opposing views and have a debate, a peaceful debate and conversation where we can still have time to listen to one another has now become an act of violence.
And that you have to be silenced for, what you believe in. My husband even yesterday had said, I am really worried for our kids' generation. I mean, it's really frightening to think that it has come to this. Right? And so let's go through this one bit at a time because there's so much to unpack here.
There really is. We could go forever on this topic. And even before us getting on, we were like, okay, we can start. But really, this is going to be such a long conversation that we're going to have ongoing from days on.
So first of all, we're talking about social media. It is everywhere, whether you can try to control it or not, whether you like it or not. And the fact that you, at times, you didn't even have to search for this video that happened yesterday, for this incident to happen. You didn't even have to search it. It just came up on feeds.
Yes.
And just the shock and the horror of someone dying.
Yes.
I mean, that is an image that is seared into people's minds. For a child to see something like this is traumatic.
It is traumatic. And that is the word that we need to be using. It's traumatic, it's violence. And I said to you earlier, like you said, it just came right up on my For You page. I didn't have to go looking for it. It was the first image that I saw when I went back onto my social media, and I thought it was AI. I actually didn't think it was real. I thought there's no way that this would be something that would show up without trigger warning or have some type of gloss over it to prepare me to see a very graphic, violent image. And
Which is, I must add too, that our role, in the media, on TV, that we shield and we try to protect, right, our viewers from something that graphic. We issue a warning, we stop it, we freeze it. We're not going to show the blood, right? But with social media these days, it's like no holds barred.
No.
It is a free for all. And I mean, what can parents do for their children? I mean, of course, you can put these app controls on. I've got that for my kids. Right? But sometimes in whether you're talking about it, there's an interest that sparks. Oh, well, maybe, kids are thinking, oh, they're a little curious. Or when they're just happen to scroll it and then they see something like that unfold, what do you do?
Well, unfortunately, some parents weren't able to do much because their children already saw it by the time they picked up their kids from school.
Yeah.
And so I was getting lots of parents reaching out to me yesterday saying, what do I do now? Because I couldn't
The damage is done.
The damage is done. I couldn't even go onto my child's phone to try to, block any type of graphic violence being shown to my child because they already saw it while they were at school. And so then they get into the car with maybe there's some of their friends and they're talking about it. And that's just a conversation that we as parents, we're not prepared to have.
Right.
We don't really know how to navigate that. And I wouldn't expect any parent to know because they're going through their own grief and their own shock and disbelief at the same time as their child is.
Right.
And to know that there was also a school shooting on top of it.
Right.
I mean,
the same day in Colorado where a student died, just recently, you had the mass shooting at the Catholic school in Minneapolis. I mean, right now is a very difficult, heavy time.
Yeah. Seeing that mother from the shooting in Minneapolis running, holding her shoes, that is an image that I'll never get out of my head.
Yeah.
And just like the image of Charlie Kirk, there's just images that you just won't ever be something you can forget.
Right.
And at the same time, and I shared this yesterday on my Instagram post, I don't ever want to become desensitized to violence. I still want to find the humanity in the shock and in the disbelief because that means I'm not numb to it.
Right.
And that means I'm not used to seeing it, and I don't ever want to be used to seeing it. So there's humanity in the shock, there's humanity in the disbelief, and there's humanity in the pain that we all are collectively feeling right now because this is really heavy.
Yeah.
And really what we're talking about is vicarious trauma. And vicarious trauma is where there is many negative compounded events in a very short amount of time, and it's repeated exposure. And we are being exposed to this through our phones.
Right.
And so that's where we all are collectively feeling vicarious trauma, and it is real.
Yeah.
And so I don't know about you, but I felt so heavy today.
Yes.
My body
Yesterday
felt heavy.
and today.
Yes, it was just, I was like, I know I need to get up and walk and eat and drink water and do all the things that I would normally do.
Right.
But it took more energy. I didn't have the motivation. I was feeling very emotionally and physically fatigued.
Right.
And so I think it's also important that we normalize that it's okay for us to not be okay right now.
Yeah.
And to expect us to operate at such a high functioning level that we normally do is really putting this out of context context, because we really need to be taking care of ourselves right now. So I rested, and I just did a gentle movement. I didn't go to my normal workout, and I just tried to modify my usual day because I knew that I was emotionally feeling this vicarious trauma.
It's almost like you sat. It's like you sat and you felt yourself in it. You allowed yourself to feel that emotional drain. I mean, I know that yesterday, you know, from just covering the day's events of what was unfolding and still in shock.
Yes.
But yet having to do our jobs and cover the news and what was happening and how things were literally unfolding by the minute. It was emotionally draining, mentally exhausting, physically. You're right. You know, like going to the gym just did not sound like a great idea.
It's a different experience too, I think, with our professions because we're so much in it, right? And we are holding space for the people we're helping and serving. And then we're also going through it ourselves.
Right.
So I was telling my client today, she was asking me how I am. I said, well, I'm good. And at the same time, I'm feeling it, the same things you're feeling too. But I know that I have to be able to be there for you while still holding space for myself.
Right.
And that's a really, I would say, abstract place to be because two things are happening at the same time. And so it gets very diabolical. And I think that can also be applied to when we're having these conversations with people that maybe we don't agree with.
Right.
How can I hold space for how I feel and what my beliefs are that are very opposing to the person I'm talking to across from me?
Right.
And I think that that's, again, and I'm sure we're gonna get there in our conversation today.
I was gonna say, you know what, let's go there now. Let's go there now because I really, really wanna dive deep in that. Because I feel like we, again, have gotten to a level that you thought it was bad then, it really has hit, unfortunately, a high point now. The vitriol has, I mean, physically played out. And it is shocking just how far people can take it. And on top of that, what was awful, I thought, you know, this incident in and of itself was so traumatic, but yet you still hear from people like the talk, it's still, there's still inflammatory language, right? After something like this. And even though you have elected officials, politicians, people on both sides finally coming together to agree that this is not acceptable. We do not condone this, right? But still you hear chirps, you know, from both sides, and you just think, how will we ever come to a civilized society? Are we going to get there? I mean, what has happened?
Well, I think it's important to recognize a little bit of the psychoeducation around what fuels this with our social media. And we know that specifically in 2020, this was, there was a study conducted that the #1 emotion that is shared the most is anger. So what we're being shown is the most intense, the most aggressive, the most violent, the most angry types of images and or words, because that's what travels the fastest. And so that sparks engagement. So
and that's what gets the most interest, right?
Most
and attention.
Yeah, so even if you have well intentions going onto your social media, it's impossible not to be exposed to the anger, to the hostility. And so because we know that, then people are primed, they're triggered, they're activated. And so they're going to say things and respond in a very aggressive way. And so it just continues to fuel that fire. So we're not spreading hope. We're not spreading compassion. We're not spreading love. And yet that's exactly what we need to be doing during this time. So in order to do that, we have to back away. We have to back away off our phones. We have to back away from those conversations that we don't need to be involved in on social media. We have to back away from the threats and the exposure of seeing those threats to people that we care about. I was mentioning to you earlier before coming onto the show that one of my colleagues that I know that I follow on Instagram, she's getting death threats. And because she posted her views on what happened, and I don't even know what her views are, but nonetheless, she's getting death threats about it.
And nobody should get death threats over that.
No. And so we don't want to add more fuel to this fire. So if there's anything I would suggest is like back away, create space.
Right, like physically.
Physically put your phone down. put the phone down, because it's not going to help you. It's going to continue to drain you to see what other people are going through. Like my stomach hurt for my friend that is getting the death threats, even though it's not happening to me.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, the political divide has run so incredibly deep for years now.
Yeah.
And, you know, it has divided families. It's divided friends. And, you know, even for strangers, whether it's on social media or, you know, just in casual conversation, if you're at a party or what have you, you know, and then it's like politics rears its ugly head up. So when you say back away, I mean, you know, let's get into the nitty-gritty now. How do we do that? I mean, to what respect, I guess, you know, do we engage/disengage respectfully?
So the research shows it's unlikely that we're going to change someone's opinion just because I say something different than maybe how you view something. So look at your motive. What is the motive of me trying to convince you to get you to see it from my perspective or from my way? Because most people are just going to double down on their belief. I'm not going to change your belief by trying to get you to do what I want you to do. So what I often tell people is you have the right to walk away from any conversation that does not align with your morals and values. You have the right to no longer create, let's say, niceness. You can change the topic of conversation. You can remove yourself from that conversation. We know that in 2020, there was a study done and where 1 in 5 people stopped having interactions with friends and certain family members because it was just too stressful.
It went too far.
It went too far. So it might be that we need to come to agreement that we're not going to talk about it. And that is a safe place to be. We're not going to talk about our political views. We're not going to talk about maybe religion. We used to say that all the time. And so we're going to focus on something else, something about with the children, something about the recipe, the food we're eating, the sporting event, the weather. There's plenty of things that we can talk about that don't have to create any type of hostility between two people.
And whether or not you want to take it there subtly or even bluntly, like, you know what? Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about something else. Right?
There's definitely times where I think, like you just mentioned, like having a much direct word or direct phrase to say, I'm not interested in talking about this. And I love being able to educate my clients about assertion. So assertion is the communication, like I'm okay and you're okay. Right? So aggression is I'm not okay, and I'm going to make sure you are not okay. Passivity is I'm not okay, and you're coming at me, right? I'm withdrawing from you. So it's best to use I statements. So
like how so?
So for example, if I start my phrase off with the word you know, you really need to stop talking about that. You're going to become defensive, because I started my sentence off of you really need to stop talking about that.
It's very accusatory.
Exactly. So when I start my sentence off with the word I'm not interested in talking about this. You're going to be less defensive. You're going to say, oh, okay, well, I just thought you might want to bring this up, and I'm not interested.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Let's move on to something else.
Okay.
So it really reduces.
It diffuses it.
Yes, it does.
Lowers the temperature in a nice way, but directly. You know, in a direct way, like, I'm not going to go there. Let's not go there.
So we can be respectful and kind while we have boundaries. And I think boundaries is a scary word for a lot of people because they think that, you know, they're going to feel guilty or they don't want to have to try to control. And it's not about controlling, it's about communicating. So I'm communicating what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not comfortable with. And so it's a way for us to make sure that we have the same set of expectations so that we can have still some type of relationship at whatever kind of medium that looks safe for us.
What do you think it's going to take for society to just lower the temperature?
I think
Can we get there?
I do, and I think we need leaders. We need leaders, and whatever, you know, whether it's, you know, sports, whether it's celebrities, whether it's musicians, artists, we need leaders to come out and to bring us back together, to befriend the opposing sides, and know that humanity is what's most important. We have to lean into the love. We have to lean into the light. And we want our children to have that.
Yeah, to set
And
an
if it's not-
example. We need to set an example for our children.
We really do. And that's the thing. We don't always have to agree, but we can come together on knowing that we need to make changes around gun violence. I mean, I think we all can agree on that. And so what that looks like, we can come together and we can work towards that together, because I think right now that's exactly what the conversation needs to be, is how can we create a different change so our children are safe? And what does that look like? So I do believe that there's hope, and it does take leaders to come out and voice that.
And I think to ourselves, right? To hold ourselves accountable for what we say and the messages that we put out there and how we treat people. The civility has to come back to center.
Yes, I always want to have empathy. I don't ever want to lose empathy. And again, it goes back to, I don't ever want to be desensitized towards violence. I always want to have empathy for people, no matter if I don't agree with them. I want that to remain, because that is the human connection. And so that's what we have to get back to. Empathy is, I put myself into your shoes. And without it, what are we? We're really disconnected. And so we need to have compassion. We need to feel with, we need to feel for the people that are in our community.
I'm so glad you said that, to put yourself in the other person's shoes, because I feel like so many times, you know, people think of themselves.
Yes.
And it's like, wait a minute. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they're faced with, their struggles, you know, and it's like, wait a minute, just take a pause. Take a moment. Take a breath. Right?
That's the big thing. And we don't give enough credit for how important it is for us to take a breath and pause. When I saw the graphic image, even the stabbing from Maryville High School, that was several weeks ago, and that image was also floating on TikTok, and that came up on my feed. And I actually will say that a lot of people were encouraging whoever posted it to take it down. You know, please take this down. No one needs to see this. There was a lot of support for the classmates, the students that were exposed to those images that were being shared online, and a lot of compassion. So that's, I think, also why I have a lot of hope, because I do see our teenagers giving each other so much compassion when they were exposed to violence right in a classroom, with that unfortunate loss that they suffered. So that's where, I mean, maybe it's not even our generation. Maybe it's the younger people's generation that is able to bring that hope. And maybe it is going to be them that are the leaders that show us that we can bring back humanity and we can come together again.
And support each other. Before we leave, what would be your final message to people?
My final message to people would be to take care of yourself and honor what you need to do for you. And if that means take the time off work, if that means go to bed early, shut your phone off, get off of your social media, hug your children, pray, listen to other people, and be compassionate. Hold on to that empathy, hold on to that humanity. I would say that is exactly what we need to be doing. We need to come together. It reminds me of the John Lennon song, you know, like how we all need to come together. And we need to be able to be there for one another.
Take care of yourself and take care of other people. Dr. Morgan Francis, always so great to have you here and all your insight. And, you know, we really appreciate everything, all the advice that you've given.
Thank you so
much. Really impactful. Hopefully people will, you know, take away a lot from that.
I hope so too.
Thank you. All right, and we want to thank you so much for watching 12 Plus.